You're listening to Storytime, old time radio for a new era. Thank you for joining us. In this series, we feature Terry Morgan reading from her work, The Ambassador, a fun, family-friendly sci-fi martial arts adventure. Previously, the ambassador and her four old friends set out on their missions. The ambassador led several Olmeri ships into their trap. They rejoined the Magellan and headed back to Dagon. This is the final episode in this series and the last chapter in the book. The ambassador calls Beth and N'amani to come help with her report. They review Alliance history and the beginnings of the ambassador training program. The ambassador recalls her first day on Roz 2 and a conversation with Master Tai many years later. Then she makes a decision that will change Beth's life forever. As I mentioned, this episode is the final episode in the series and the last chapter in the first book. It is also a prelude for the second book, The Ambassador at Ras Al Hag. In that book, the ambassador is 30 years younger. She's just arrived on Roz 2 to begin her training. As I was writing the stories, I made lots of references to her training, her history, and what it took for her to become an ambassador. But I didn't include much about that directly. That's part of why I wrote this chapter. I wanted to fill in some of that history. As it turned out, what I originally intended to be the final chapter turned into the second book. This chapter completes one of the main character arcs in the story. In chapter 1, the ambassador muses about finding someone to teach. She's getting older, she doesn't have children. Finding someone to teach would give her a chance to pass on what she's spent her life learning. But she can't just pick someone. The student must want to learn. More than that, the student must show good character and have a clear heart. Not everyone who wants to learn should learn. That's true in the real world, too. In chapter 2, the ambassador and the doctor discover Beth can hold Aladrel, the ambassador's mystical sword. They can't tell Beth how special that is. It would change her fate. They have to wait for her to discover who she is on her own. All they can do is help her learn and guide her. They both enjoy her company. Beth learns quickly. She is curious about everything. The ambassador's decision to teach Beth completes both these arcs. Beth wants to learn. She is overjoyed that the ambassador is going to teach her. The ambassador is very happy to have someone like Beth to teach. That teacher-student relationship is more than important for the traditional martial arts. It's the basis for how we study and learn. We trace our lineage through our teachers. In traditional Chinese martial arts, first, a student would have to find a teacher, then take a gift to the teacher and ask to study. The teacher would decide to accept the person as a student or not. At the more advanced levels, this remains true today. The importance of the teacher-student relationship appears throughout the stories. I highlighted in the character of Master Tai. He's the teacher. He is one of the best of the best. He's also a bit eccentric and very protective. He chose 5, taught them, encouraged them, and helped them grow. In the real world of martial arts, we learn more from our teachers than movements. We learn what is important and why. And like the character Maru points out to the ambassador in the stories, it's not something we are going to try to find out, but it is something we are going to find out. Who the teacher is. It's not something that the teacher actively teaches, but it is part of what the student learns. The longer we study with someone, the more like that teacher we become. Parents and children have this connection too. Someone recently asked me about the central conflict in the stories. It's not the fight to protect the local neighborhood from the Olmeri. That is merely the outward conflict. It gives the character something to do. It sets up a moral dilemma. The Olmeri are destroying whole planets. Their destruction cannot be allowed to continue. how to stop them. That outward conflict continues throughout all the books. But the central conflict in the stories isn't out there, it's in here. It's inside, not outside. The same as in the martial arts. It's about how the characters deal with their own limitations. It's about how they grow, become friends, and get older. That's what we do too. We learn, we grow, we get older, and sometimes we tell stories to pass on what we've learned. Now, continuing with the ambassador, Chapter 8, Origins. Wait in stillness, listen for the quiet. Before the beginning, dreamers dream dreams. How did we get here? The ambassador's quarters on the Magellan. The ambassador was in her quarters trying to sort out what she needed for her report to the High Council. They had asked for a preliminary report as soon as they arrived on Dagon. She paced back and forth. She looked down at several screens she had on her desk. Each had a different archive and a different collection of footage. She switched a wall screen on, then off. Finally, she went over to the comlink. Beth, N'amani, could both of you please come to my quarters and help me sort out this report? We got quite a bit more than I thought, she said. Do you want me to bring the small recorder? It's good for collecting notes, Beth asked. I'll bring my notepad, N'amani said. Yes, Beth, thank you, N'amani. That would be super. You have such a knack for making me stick to the main points, the ambassador said. She closed the comlink and sighed in relief. She really didn't like writing reports. At least with Beth and N'amani helping, it wouldn't take nearly as long. She put on a fresh pot of coffee. She was happy they had gotten so much data and more than a little intimidated. It was going to take weeks to sort through all the visual recordings they had made and do a full analysis. They had even more data from the spectral sensor readings. The door chime sounded. Come in, the ambassador called out. Beth came in. She set a small recorder on the table with the ambassador's screens. She looked at the different screens and then at the ambassador. She frowned. N'amani followed Beth into the room. He pointed to the screens. Were you trying to watch all of them at once? He asked. The ambassador shrugged. Sort of. It was just too slow to go through them one by one, but it wasn't working. That's why I called you, she said. She grinned her Cheshire cat smile. N'amani chuckled. Of course you did, he said. The ambassador laughed. Would you like some coffee, Beth? She asked. Yes, please. I've gotten quite fond of coffee, Beth said. N'amani, would you? The ambassador asked. No, I would not, thank you, he said emphatically. He cringed. The ambassador laughed. I have tea and fresh orange juice. The trees in the arboretum have fruit now, she said. N'amani smiled. Thank you, orange juice. I'm sorry to be so quick, but that coffee drink is not to my liking. Not at all, he said. He wrinkled his nose. The ambassador grinned. I remember, she said. She poured a glass of orange juice and handed it to him. Thank you. This really is quite nice, N'amani said. He took a sip, kept the glass under his nose, and smiled. The ambassador started pacing again. She picked up one of the screens, then put it down and picked up another one. The council wants a preliminary report. I've been looking at what we collected this time, our previous reports, and what we know about the Olmeri, she said. N'amani reached out to take the screen from her hand. Ambassador, the council is expecting a trip report, not an encyclopedia. Why are you looking at these archives? Some of them date back to the founding of the Alliance, he said. The ambassador sighed. I need to put what we have in perspective somehow. There are so many things we don't know and don't understand about our own history. How can we look at what the Olmeri are doing? We don't know that much about their society, their culture, or their history. Why are they destroying whole systems? What do they gain? She asked. Beth shook her head. Can't we just start where we are? We have sensor readings, we have our own logs, and the logs from the other ships. Isn't that enough?" she asked. The ambassador shook her head. "If I don't put some perspective on it, the council members will add their own. They are going to slice and dice whatever I give them. I want to start with something they won't be able to pick apart quite so easily. There are still some who consider it might be better to find a way to get a deal with the Olmeri, even offer some concessions to get a treaty," she said. N'amani shook his head emphatically. "They can't be serious. A treaty with the Olmeri?" he asked. The ambassador nodded. "There are those on the council who would consider it. They won't advocate for it, but if they could find a way to see it as an option, they'd take it," she said. Beth shook her head. "That's hard to believe. Don't they understand what the Olmeri are doing?" she asked. The ambassador looked at Beth and N'amani, straightened her shoulders, and grinned. "They will after they read my report," she said. N'amani lowered his chin and looked at her. "Ah, yes, the report that hasn't been written yet," he said. The ambassador smiled at him. "Somehow, we need to make it crystal clear that what the Olmeri are doing is not benevolent," she said. "You couldn't just show them the footage?" Beth asked. "Not without perspective." "I agree with you. It's horrible. But why did they do it? What's the background? There has to be some context," the ambassador said. N'amani nodded. "She's right, Beth. The images we have make me sick. All that destruction for what? Shiny cities with skyscrapers? But if we only show the destruction without talking about the patterns of incursions, the impact on existing civilizations, and all the rest," he said. Beth nodded and smiled. "Okay, I get it. But then where should we start? What the Olmeri are doing has a connection to every planet in the Alliance. It's not just minerals or grain crops that are at risk. It's everything," she said. The ambassador looked at her. "Yes, that's where I was when you came in," she said. N'amani laughed. Beth looked down, shrugged, and smiled. N'amani took a few steps back, then turned around. "Ambassador, your perspective is important for this. It's hard to argue with the perspective of an ambassador anyway. The way you frame the situation affects everything from the way we present the report to the decisions the High Council might make. They are not out here with us. The only way they know what is going on is from the reports they get," he said. The ambassador shook her head. "It's not quite that stark. They look at other things," she said. N'amani turned his head to one side. "Really? Then why am I here, he asked. The ambassador nodded. "Point taken. Thank you. All right then. How do I get from 'we went there, did stuff, came back' to something that will make sense? Something that's coherent?" she asked. N'amani and Beth looked at each other, shrugged, and shook their heads. "Maya, would you join us?" the ambassador asked. Maya appeared in the center of the room. "I'm trying to put the situation with the Olmeri in perspective for a report to the High Council. I'm stuck. Could you give us a synopsis? How did we get here? I mean, as a civilization, how did we get here?" "Just the highlights, though," the ambassador said. "Of course, Ambassador. Where would you like me to start?" Maya asked. "When the first Terrans left the Sol system. How did we migrate?" the ambassador asked. Maya frowned. "That's a little early, don't you think?" she asked. The ambassador smiled. "Humor me?" "Just the short version," she said. Maya nodded. "When the first Terrans left the Sol system, they migrated erratically at first, choosing the closest systems, not necessarily the most promising, mostly because they couldn't get any further. Their craft were limited in speed and distance. Two almost simultaneous discoveries gave them the ability to go further. First, they developed what would become our light drive. Then they developed a more advanced version of their existing fusion engines with a stable, radiant core." I'll be right back. The ability to stabilize, aggregate, and focus that energy, along with developments and discoveries in the material sciences, gave them the capacity to build faster ships. They were still quite slow compared with our current interstellar ships, she said. N'amani shook his head. That seems like too much information about things that aren't really connected to our report. Do we need to include how we developed our ships, he asked. Does it help us understand how they developed their ships? Do we have anything to connect this to the information we have about the Olmeri? Some progression of development? Do we even know how they build their ships, Maya? The ambassador asked. Unsure as yet, Ambassador. I have only stored what you brought back. It's quite a lot. It's going to take time to tag and process, Maya said. N'amani made a note. That is a good point, Ambassador. If we understood more about their ships, we might have a better idea of how to stop them, he said. Okay, Maya, please continue, the ambassador said. Maya started again. As the Terrans learned to build better ships, they began traveling to nearby systems. They started with the Alpha Centauri system and moved out to Sirius and Procyon, the closest systems to Sol. As they developed ships with greater range, they moved into the Vega, Eridani, and Fomalhaut systems. They found many planets around minor stars, some occupied, some not. They looked for places they could establish trade, create alliances, and, of course, more settlements. They established the first galactic central government on the planet Dagon in the Fomalhaut system during the second millennium of outward expansion, she said. Beth looked at the ambassador. This seems like it could be relevant to what we are seeing with the Olmeri, she said. The ambassador nodded. Maya, please tag this passage for the report, she said. Yes, Ambassador. Should I go on? Maya asked. The ambassador nodded. A little further, please, she said. Maya continued. During the Great Expansion, the Central Alliance sent traders to many worlds. Some of those they met were friendly, others were not. Some preferred to be left alone. Some welcomed the alliance. Others became interested in what the alliance could offer for the taking. The High Council decided they needed a better understanding of what was going on and a better way to address threats. Treaties weren't enough. The alliance knew the assessments they needed weren't something they could send spies to do. A military team could not do it, nor could a trade negotiator. They needed someone who could negotiate a treaty and read the room, someone who could blend in with different cultures and different situations. They didn't want spies to report secretly, nor did they want someone who would only follow orders. They needed emissaries who could tell them what their position should be, help change things when necessary, who could actively build the alliance. They needed ambassadors, she said. Stop there, please, Maya. What comes after this? The ambassador asked. The development of the ambassador program on Roz 2, Maya said. N'amani frowned. Maya, would you scan that entire period? Is there anything in that part of Alliance history that seems relevant to what we are facing with the Olmeri? He asked. Maya was quiet for a moment. I can't find anything. Most of that period is concerned with trade alliances and working with the masters on Roz 2 to create the training program, she said. The ambassador shook her head. I'm not sure that's relevant. The Olmeri are definitely going out to colonize other planets, but they don't seem interested in treaties or any sort of cooperation. The training program on Roz 2 was created to help facilitate trade and cooperation, not takeover, she said. That might be an important difference, N'amani suggested. He made a note. True, the ambassador said, nodding. Ambassador, could Maya continue just a bit? I'd like to hear more about how the ambassador program got started, Beth asked quietly. I'd like to hear more too, N'amani said. Of course, the ambassador said. She smiled and nodded to Maya. During the early years of the Great Expansion, the Alliance and the Council of Nine at Ras Al Hag came to an understanding. The Ras Al Hag sector was to be left alone. Trade would be limited to keep traders from spending too much time on their worlds. Casual travelers were not welcome on Ras 2. Only the original people on the worlds would be allowed to develop any new settlements. The masters valued their way of life and were determined to protect it. What the Alliance did not know was that the Masters were quite a bit more advanced than they let on, Maya recited. Like the Cora? N'amani asked. The ambassador looked carefully at them. More. The Masters of Razzlehog have exceptional fighting skills and an uncanny ability to assess the true character of a person. That's why the Alliance contacted them. They wanted a program that would both reveal the character of the person and prepare those who could complete it to become ambassadors, she said. Beth pulled back a little in awe. This is the program you went through? And your classmates, she asked. The ambassador smiled at Beth. Yes. Maya, just a little more, please, she said. Maya nodded. The Masters decided who they would accept into the program. A person could have all the qualifications to apply, wait years, and still not be chosen. Their selection process remains well guarded to this day. Both the Central Alliance and the Masters benefited from the exchange. As the years went by, the Masters became less reclusive and more open to trade. They started allowing a few casual travelers to promote cultural exchange. Study with the Masters of Razzlehog became a requirement for any trade negotiator post in the Alliance, she said. The comm chime sounded. The doctor's voice came through the comm link. Ambassador, we're planning dinner for 7 p.m. Everyone is invited. I'm preparing a few special selections. It's going to be a very nice table. I'm making truffles, too, he said. The ambassador laughed. No space barnacles, okay? She asked. The doctor laughed. No, thank you. Not today, he said. I'm here with N'amani and Beth trying to sort out this report. I'll try and be there a little early, maybe 6:30, the ambassador said. She sighed and rested her head on her hand. The comm link closed. You don't look very happy, Ambassador, N'amani said. It could be quite some time before my old classmates and I have dinner together again. They will be going home soon, the ambassador said. It had been great catching up with Centaur. Morrow and Biani were still the same, and Galen, well, he always made her smile. The doctor reminded her a bit of Galen. They had the same playful, boyish charm and quick wit. Did you want me to continue, Ambassador? Maya asked. No, thank you, Maya. I think we've narrowed things down quite a bit. It looks like it's going to take another few days to sort out what to put in the report. It's not going to get done today, the ambassador said. Maya faded. N'amani looked at the ambassador. I'd like to hear more about your training program. Your skills are pretty amazing, he said. Beth nodded with an eager smile. You would? Both of you? Are you sure? The ambassador asked. She was surprised and wary. It wasn't a casual conversation. It would be their introduction to the program and all it represented. They both nodded. The ambassador smiled. Very well, but not right now. I'm not saying no, just not right now. Thanks to both of you, I've just figured out how to start my report. I need to draft it while it's fresh. We can talk about some of it at dinner if you like, she said. With your classmates? N'amani asked. He smiled a huge smile. The ambassador nodded. Why don't you two go get ready for dinner and then see if there's anything you can do to help the doctor, she said. N'amani smiled a mischievous grin. He picked up his notepad and started for the door. I'd like to help with the truffles. We'll see you shortly, Ambassador, he said. I could help with those too, Beth said. She quickly picked up her recorder and followed N'amani out. The ambassador went back over to the table and sat down. She looked around the room. Her quarters on the Magellan were nice, not opulent or pretentious, but nice. There were always a few things she wanted to change. This could be better, that could be different, but she was content with what she had. It was one of the lessons Master Tai taught them. Be content with what you have. It wasn't that they should be resigned to not having something better, but they should avoid paying too much attention to wanting whatever it was they didn't have. That was the key. What we have or don't have isn't what matters. It's wanting what we don't have that creates the problem. So then if we don't have a nice bowl of soup today, we can spend the day thinking about how nice it would be to have that soup and bemoaning our fate that we don't. Or we can accept that today we don't have the soup and try to do what we can so that tomorrow maybe we can have the soup. Or we could decide that we don't want soup. Wanting what makes us uncomfortable or discontented. That longing gives rise to jealousy, greed, lust for power, and more. It's destructive. At the same time, striving for what we don't have gives us courage, determination, and something to work for, something more to achieve. It's creative. She turned on one of the screens and began recording. The Olmeri are not content with what they have, she said, starting her report. Fresh dirt and the smell of flowers. The Arboretum on the Magellan. The ambassador had finished drafting her preliminary report. She decided to take a detour through the Arboretum on her way to dinner. Being there reminded her of her time on Roz, too. She liked the smell of fresh dirt and the way the air smelled clean just after the sprinklers had stopped. She was looking at one of the racks of small sprouts. Beth came around the rack. Ambassador, the doctor said he thought I might find you here, she said. It's not time for dinner yet, is it? The ambassador asked. No, not yet. I wanted to find a way to ask Maya to tag the recordings and the data we collected. It's good that we brought back all this information, but I don't know how to even start to catalog it so we can find anything. There's so much, Beth said. We did get quite a lot, didn't we? The ambassador asked. Beth nodded. Yes, I'm used to dealing with our archives. They are extensive, but they've been tagged and there are all sorts of tools we can use. Trying to tag all this raw footage is much harder. With our trips, I was there, so I know what to do. For these, I really don't know where to start, she said. We were all looking for different things, weren't we? What if you use our teams? Tag everything we did with my name. Do the same for Galen, Centaur, Maru, and Biani. That would at least let us know who the source is for that information, the location, and the perspective, the ambassador said. Beth's face brightened. That's so much easier than what I was trying to do. Thank you, she said. She turned to leave. Now I'll be finished before dinner. I've already got a script written. And Maya, she said under her breath as she hurried out the door. You're welcome. Come back when you're done, the ambassador called out after her. She began slowly walking around, looking at the plants and smelling the air. The arboretum wasn't small. They'd created paths that wound through the racks of plants that made it seem like a much larger space. A few of the trees were in flower. The scent carried through the air. Racks above held vines covered with gourds in various stages of growth. Grapes trailed across a lattice. Tomatoes and peppers were just sprouting on the lower racks. She came around one end where they had planted spices and herbs. She took a leaf from one of the basil plants and broke it just under her nose. So nice, fresh picked. There's nothing like it, she thought. She stopped to look at the small beds of freshly planted lavender and sage. Little shoots were just starting to poke above the dirt. She nodded. They will need time to grow, she said. She smiled, sat down on a small bench, and dozed off. Planting the garden, recall. The greeting compound on Roz 2. Michael Lawrence had just arrived on Roz 2. She was standing near the gate at the reception compound. It was still too early for daylight. Several other recruits stood around looking at each other and waiting. She'd gotten in late, been assigned to a room, and told to report to the front gate before daybreak the next day. Not much of a welcome. Do you know what we're doing here? Micah asked a young man near the gate. I'll be right back. Do you know what we're doing here? Micah asked a young man near the gate. He frowned at her. Selections. Weren't you here for orientation? He asked. Micah shook her head. No, I was delayed. I got in last night, she said. I'm Centaur. Welcome to Roz 2, he said, grinning. My name is Micah, she replied, smiling up at him. Just at daybreak, 9 masters arrived. They each wore robes of different colors. They stood at a distance and talked among themselves. Then they split up and walked over to where the recruits were standing. Each master pointed at a few of the new students and motioned for them to follow. They all walked off in different directions. Micah had known from childhood that she wanted to become an ambassador. She read all the stories and watched the history archives over and over. She never thought about doing anything else. But attending the special academy that would prepare her hadn't been possible. Her grandparents couldn't afford it. It wasn't their fault. They had raised her after her parents were killed in an accident. They'd done their best. They tried to discourage her. They wanted her to accept a clerk's job. It would be safe and reliable, they told her. She couldn't stand the thought. She wanted to be an ambassador, not a clerk in some back office somewhere. She had spent years doing physical training, learning languages, studying history. She'd worked hard at all of it. Finally, she had received her invitation letter. She had been selected by one in gold and rust colors who introduced himself as Master Tai Aragon. It wasn't until after selections that she learned Master Tai was the master of the House of Two, centering, and a keeper of earth. The keepers of earth worked with solids, especially the soil used for growing things. Master Tai had mastered the 3 arts of centering, finding the middle way, standing still, and becoming one. He was an adept of the 9th order in the ancient arts. He had selected 5 of them. Centaur, Galen, Maru, and Biani were the others. She was glad Centaur was in her group. As with most things, she would not understand why they had been selected until much later, when they would be asked to choose which element they would keep: metal, water, wood, fire, or earth. Galen and Biani were from the Vega system, her family's home system. Centaur came from the Eridani system. Maru was from the original home system, Sol. Micah liked Galen immediately. He was outgoing and friendly. He had a boyish quality and an insatiable curiosity. Maru and Biani became friends almost on sight. They were so very different. Maru was calm and quiet. Biani was not. Micah liked both of them immensely. Centaur had seemed a little distant at first, but soon showed himself to be warm, generous, and quite protective of all of them. He came to be the most loyal friend any of them could possibly want. He was the one they could go to when there was something hard to do or something they were trying to work out. He had the uncanny ability to cut directly to the core, to ask the hard questions, and he would always, always tell the truth, even when it might hurt. He was destined to become a great teacher. They all felt it. The 5 quickly became fast friends. They shared a table in the dining hall and had more than a few spirited conversations. They will need time to grow. Recall. The garden at the training compound on Roz 2. Micah was on her hands and knees, planting 30 seedling peppers in the garden. She had dug out the plot, but then Master Tai changed where she should plant. She had to do all the work over again. It took her all day. Then she had to plant the peppers. She had just finished putting the last ones in the ground when Master Tai reappeared. They will need time to grow, Master Tai said. He looked down at her. You must tend to them so they grow well, he said. She looked up at him with a puzzled expression. Okay, how am I supposed to do that? What kind of training is this? I didn't come here to learn farming. All this Master Tai wants me to do is dig in the dirt, she thought. She had been trying to keep calm, but she was about to give up. She'd expected to be attending classes and doing physical training, maybe attending some lectures on philosophy and taking some language classes. But for weeks, all she'd done was work in the garden, shoveling and raking and turning the soil, making and repairing the fences to keep the small animals out of the beds, potting mint and peppermint to put around the outer edges of the garden to keep other animals away. Every day, Master Tai found some part of what she'd done needed something more, so she had to do it all over again. Today Master Tai came to get her an hour before sunrise. He stood in the doorway. "Come along. It's time to plant," he said. "But Master Tai, it's still too dark. We can't see anything," Micah complained. She sat up on her cot. It was a simple wooden frame cot with padding, not the most comfortable thing she'd slept on. She'd started to get used to it. Like everything else, most things on Roz 2 were primitive compared to what she'd had at home. Come along, it's time to plant. Come along," Master Tai said. He chided her as he turned and started walking toward the garden. Micah shook her head. She tried asking him about several things, but most of the time all he said was, "Come along, wait and see." It made no sense, so she gave up asking. It was easier to just wait and see. She could see him outside waiting for her. She got up, put on her shoes and jacket, and went out to follow him. Master Tai led her to the garden patch she'd been working the day before. She'd broken up most of the big clumps. The fresh turned dirt was clean and fine. It was ready to be planted. Her tools were still there, ready for the plants. Master Tai looked around, then he pointed to a section of land on the other side of the yard from where she'd been turning the dirt. "Over there is good. We will plant there. Make sure the soil is broken into small pieces. I will go to bring the plants," he said. "But Master Tai, I've already prepared this area. Every day I turned the soil like you showed me. This spot is ready. That one is not. I will have to do all of this work again," Micah said. Master Tai frowned a little. He looked back and forth at the two areas thoughtfully. "Yes, that is true. However, I see that you have become very good at turning and breaking up the soil. It will not take you long at all to make that section ready. I will go to get the plants. You prepare the soil. I will come back later," he said. And just like that, he left. Micah sighed and picked up her tools. There was no point in arguing with him. Once he decided something, it was impossible to change his mind. She walked over to where he had pointed and started digging. The soil was harder than the area she'd finished. She looked back at the section she'd already prepared. "How can we plant anything here? What's wrong with him? Why didn't he tell me he wanted this area and not that one? Seems like he's taking advantage of me, making me do all this work. Sure, if the peppers grow, we'll all have some. Why do I have to do all this work? He didn't help at all. He just pointed and told me what to do. He should be here helping me. He's the one that wants a different spot now. He couldn't even stick around to help. He just walked off and left me here to do all of this again," she muttered. It took her the better part of an hour to calm down. She reminded herself that whatever was going on, she had signed up for it. Whatever it was, whatever the training was going to be, she might as well get used to it. Besides, we have to eat. If growing some peppers will help put food on the table, I can do my part, she thought. She stopped to take a break just before noon. Just as she was getting ready to sit down, Master Tai appeared out of nowhere. "It's time to plant. It's not time to rest. The seedlings will not wait for you. It's time to plant," he said. She got up and started in again. It was early evening when she finished, not yet dusk. She was standing off to one side, resting on the rake handle, when she saw Master Tai approaching with a large tray of seedlings in his hands. She'd planted the seeds right after she arrived. She'd been surprised at how well they had sprouted and how quickly they'd grown. "Let's get started," Master Tai said. He put the tray down on the ground. Micah sighed. She picked up the tray and started to turn it over to dump out the seedlings. "He didn't mean that. He's not going to help me do this," she thought. Master Tai stopped her. "No, not that way. One at a time. Be careful not to break the stems. Don't crush the leaves," he said. Micah took hold of the stem and started to pull one of the seedlings out of the tray. Master Tai stopped her again. "If you do that, you will break the stem. It's too small to hold. You must start from underneath," he said. Micah looked at him again and took a breath, trying to contain herself. "Okay, fine. He's picked at everything else I've done. Why stop now?" she thought. "Use this," Master Tai said. He handed her a small, flat, rather dull knife. Micah looked at it for a minute. She was tired and hungry, and this really wasn't making any sense. She couldn't hold back. "What am I supposed to do with this, Master Tai? I thought you wanted me to plant these seedlings," she asked. Master Tai smiled. The shape of the bowl is determined by what is, its usefulness by what is not, he said quietly. Micah looked up at him. Oh, great, more riddles. I'm too tired for this. He isn't making any sense. A dull knife and riddles. What do I do with this, she thought. She knelt down next to the tray. Each of the seeds had been planted and the sprouts cultivated, so there was space between them. That gave each one a better chance to grow big enough to plant. She looked at the neat rows of plants in the tray. What is not, she thought. Then she saw it. Each of the seedlings had some space between the others. She used the knife to cut in behind one of the seedlings, lifting it from underneath, so the roots and some of the soil came up too. Then she used the back of the knife to set the roots into the ground and closed the dirt over it with her hand. She looked at Master Tai. He seemed to have a bit of a smile. It was hard to tell. Sometimes he smiled, and his smile was not really what he intended. Master Tai nodded. Do it again, he said. He looked at the tray, then he walked away. The work went slowly. Micah had to be careful not to break the stems or damage the tiny leaves. She figured out that if she kept her hands soft around the new seedlings and her fingers strong to move the dirt out of the way, she wouldn't damage them. One by one, she set each into the ground. By the time she finished, it had gotten dark. She could barely see what she was doing. She had to feel her way along the rows. She gathered the tools. Tired did not begin to describe how she felt. She'd been up since before sunrise and had worked all day without a break. Every time she stopped to rest, Master Tai appeared. It's time to plant, it's not time to rest, he'd say, and walk off. Finally, she finished and sat down. I'm tired. It's late. I'm done, she said. And as if on cue, Master Tai appeared. She stood up. Now what, she thought. Master Tai stood there and looked at her for what seemed a long time. Then he looked at the garden. They will need time to grow. You must tend to them so they grow well. Now it's time to rest. We will start again tomorrow, he said. He turned to leave. Micah picked up her tools. She thought she saw him smile. Yes, Master Tai, she said. Master Tai did smile. He had already seen that she was pretty amazing. Her dedication and perseverance were admirable. She didn't quit. That was what he liked the most about her. She was stubborn. She worked hard. She was quick. She was good at solving problems and puzzles. Yes, she might be able to do it. She might be able to center all five for the joining. But she has much to learn, he thought. He smiled a little more. Tending the garden. Recall. Master Tai's house on Roz 2. Micah had gone back to Roz 2 for a visit after she graduated. She was sitting with Master Tai in the garden. They were talking about the next group of students and how the master selected who to train. Master Tai, what was it that made you choose me? Micah asked. At first, I felt you, Master Tai replied. Micah shook her head. I don't understand, she said. I knew you were there before I saw you. I felt you, Master Tai said. Micah nodded in recognition. He'd taught her this skill. It was more a sense of knowing that there was someone there and what they wanted. Then, I watched you, Master Tai said. Micah grinned. That is true. It seemed like every time I turned around you were there. I got used to it. What did you see? She asked. I saw you, Master Tai said. I don't understand, Micah said. I saw you, Master Tai said again. He smiled. I saw you get up every day to turn the soil in the garden. I did not have to tell you to fetch water or mend the fences. You took care of what needed to be done. You listened to me even though you were angry and thought it was beneath you to dig in the dirt, he said. Micah blushed. You knew that's how I felt, she asked. Master Tai nodded. I also saw how quickly you learned that you would follow, but not without question. You had the will and the stamina to finish the planting no matter how tired you were or how long it took. You took special care with each one of the plants, tending the soil, carrying water for them, and making sure they were all safe, he said. I'll be right back. I tried to keep them all alive, but 2 of them didn't take root, and 3 more were damaged by a rabbit that got through the fence, Micah said. Master Tai patted her hand gently. Micah, we had a very good harvest from those 25 plants. Do you remember? He asked. Micah smiled proudly. Yes, Master Tai. We had plenty and enough to share with others, she said. Master Tai lowered his head, then smiled at her. I'm not sure you understand what you did, he said. I grew some peppers, Micah asked. Master Tai looked at her and smiled. He shook his head. You did more, much more. I would normally not talk about this, but it seems I need to tell you. We didn't expect so many of those plants to survive and bear fruit. We never expected 25 would survive or that we would have such a harvest. The soil where I told you to plant was not good, he said. Micah sat forward. Then why? How? She asked. We wanted to know that too. It seems you have a gift for growing things, Master Tai said. Micah shook her head, puzzled. All I did was pay attention to them and try to give them what they needed, she said. Master Tai smiled approvingly and nodded. Yes, you did. Yes, you did, he said. Micah had learned to tend the garden. Other than what Master Tai told her to do, she had to rely on her intuition and instincts. She'd never tried growing anything before. If there wasn't enough rain, she had to pump water from the well and bring the buckets to the garden. Master Tai showed her how to carry 2 buckets, one on each end of a long pole. After several days of very sore shoulders and legs, she could get most of the way to the garden without spilling too much. She got better at managing the buckets and stronger day by day. The plants grew tall. They had fresh peppers for weeks. Master Tai had given her the mithril shirt shortly after that first harvest. At the time, she didn't know that the masters had never before accepted anyone for inside training before their first year was complete. She also didn't find out until much later that the masters had all suspected from the first day that she might have some special skills, or that Master Tai had chosen her first. Tend to them so they grow well, Master Tai said. She could still hear the encouragement in his voice. Seedlings. The Arboretum on the Magellan. Beth went back to the Arboretum to get the ambassador for dinner. She found her dozing on a bench next to a rack of new herbs. Beth smiled. She looks almost fragile, she thought. She touched the ambassador's arm lightly. Ambassador? She asked. The ambassador was smiling just a little in her sleep. She opened her eyes. She smiled up at Beth. Seems I drifted off, she said. Are you okay? Beth asked. Yes, I'm fine, the ambassador replied, noticing her concern. She looked at Beth closely. I need to be sure, she thought. She slowed her breathing, crossed her arms briefly as if preparing to close her outer cloak, and extended her energy. Beth felt a gentle warmth. She looked around to see if the grow lights had come on. That wasn't it. Then it was over. She felt an odd sense of peacefulness. The ambassador smiled a little more. I was just thinking about the history we were reviewing, my own history, about Roz too, and about gardening. Have you ever tried to grow something from seeds, Beth? She asked. No, Ambassador. We always had synthesizers. I didn't learn much about the agriculture or seeds until I joined your delegation. I enjoy learning how things grow. N'amani said when we got the chance I could go with him to visit his farm, she said. She smiled broadly. The ambassador turned her head sideways. Do you want to learn how to grow things? She asked. Beth looked at her quizzically. Now? She asked. Why not? Now is a good time, the ambassador said. Well, sure, of course I want to learn. All the times I've helped the doctor pick different plants and make different preparations, I want to learn how to do that too. And all the foods he can make, I wish I knew how to make that soup he made for us last week. It was so good, she said. The ambassador smiled her Cheshire cat grin. It starts with the seeds, she said. But there weren't any seeds in the soup, Beth said, before she realized that wasn't the question. Were there vegetables in the soup? The ambassador asked. Well, yes, Beth replied. She was still trying to make the connection. Then there were seeds in the soup, the ambassador told her. Beth looked sideways and frowned. Where did the vegetables come from? The ambassador asked. Beth shook her head. Come with me, the ambassador said. She got up and walked down one of the paths between the racks of seedlings. She stopped in front of a rack and turned to face Beth. What do you see? She asked. She pointed at a tray. Dirt and some little green things, Beth replied, scrunching up her nose. Those little green things are seedlings. They just sprouted. In a few weeks, some of these seedlings will have grown into tomato plants. A few weeks after that, they will bear fruit, the ambassador said. Beth shook her head. Those are tomato plants? How can you tell? She asked. Seedlings often don't look the same as mature plants. We watch them grow, we cultivate them, and we have to wait for them to develop, the ambassador said. She was watching Beth closely. How can you tell which ones are which? How do you know these are tomato plants and not carrots or something else? Beth asked. The ambassador nodded and smiled. That's a very good question. First you have to look, but you must also know what you are looking at. When you can see clearly, then you can distinguish. Look at the shape of this leaf and the way it's pushing through the center. See the edges on it? Now, look at the stem, how it holds the small leaves on both sides. Use your fingers to pinch the tip from one of the small leaves, she said. Beth reached out to pinch the leaf of one of the tiny plants. She uprooted it. Oh no, I'm sorry. How do I put it back? She asked. It can't be put back. It's too small, the ambassador said quietly. Beth looked down sadly. I didn't want to, she said. You feel sad that you can't put it back so it can grow, the ambassador asked sympathetically. She wanted Beth to pay attention to the feeling. Beth nodded. Yes, she said. Then why did you uproot it? The ambassador asked. Her tone became stern and sharp. I wasn't trying to uproot it. It was just so small. It just seemed to come up by itself, Beth said. Would it have moved if you had not touched it? The ambassador asked. No, Beth replied nervously. Then it was your action, the ambassador insisted. Yes, all right, it was my action, but I didn't want that to happen, Beth said. Her hands were shaking and she was trying not to cry. Really? If you did not want that to happen, why did you do it? Why didn't you stop it? The ambassador demanded. Beth started crying. I wasn't trying to do it. I wasn't. I'm sorry, ambassador. I'm really sorry, she said. The ambassador had always been so kind to me, but now she's being very sharp and so much more demanding. There's no sympathy, no kindness, none of the usual empathy in her voice. She is hard and cold, she thought. The ambassador shook her head. But you did. You did it. When you reached out to pinch that leaf, you did not see how fragile those small plants are. You did not pay attention to how tiny the leaves are, nor to how much force you were using. So instead of taking a tiny pinch of a leaf, you uprooted the entire plant. Now that plant won't ever grow, she said. I'm sorry, Beth said over and over. She wanted to run away, but she couldn't. The ambassador wasn't having it. This is not about you being sorry. It's about you not doing it next time. You must understand what you are doing. You must be ready to bear the consequences of your action, she said. Beth looked down. She was ashamed and embarrassed. Then she stopped crying. She shook her head. I don't deserve this. I wasn't trying to harm anything, she thought. The ambassador saw the change in Beth. She smiled. You said you wanted to learn, didn't you? Did you think the lessons would be easy? They are not. None of them are easy. That's the point, she said. Beth looked up, raised her eyebrows, and shook her head. She was not quite sure what she was hearing. The ambassador still wasn't being sympathetic, but there was understanding in her voice again, not harsh judgment. The ambassador smiled quietly. If you want to learn, you must be prepared for many lessons. Some will be easier than others. Some will be extremely hard. You will fail. From failure, you will learn much more than you will ever learn from success, she said. Beth smiled at the irony. That's better, the ambassador said. Beth looked at the ambassador, blinked, and took a deep breath. Her tone had almost returned to normal. Ambassador, you weren't inviting me to learn about growing tomato plants, were you? She asked. The ambassador shook her head and smiled like a Cheshire cat on a porch swing. No, I wasn't, she said. Beth couldn't quite contain herself. It was hard to say it. It was more than she had dreamed. She wanted so much to learn. You were inviting me? She asked. Yes, I will teach you, the ambassador said. She smiled as a tear welled up in her eye. Yes, of course I want to learn, ambassador. I never dreamed, Beth said. She started crying. The ambassador patted her shoulder. You need to learn to dream bigger dreams. You must learn to see with your heart. Then what you dream will change, she said. She was not going to tell Beth what she had seen when she looked into her heart. There was much she would not be telling her any time soon. Maybe one day, she thought. Beth looked at her puzzled. I don't understand, she said. The ambassador smiled. Seeds need time to grow, she said. Beth shook her head. I still don't understand, she said. The ambassador nodded. You will, she said. Beth looked up and caught a glimpse of one of the timers. Ambassador, we are late for dinner. The others will be waiting for us, she said. The ambassador smiled. We are not late. We will arrive at precisely the time we are supposed to arrive, she said. But we were supposed to be there 20 minutes ago. They will all be waiting for us, Beth said. The ambassador raised her eyebrows. That is true. But if we had been there 20 minutes ago, we would not have been here. Was there nothing here we needed to do? She asked. Beth shook her head and frowned. The ambassador smiled gently. You must learn to consider everything, not just one thing. If we were destined to be at dinner now, we would be there. What we have done here is what we needed to do in this time, in this place. It could be no other way. Now it is time to go. Do you understand? She asked. I was only thinking about, Beth said. She stopped, realizing that was the point. Her face brightened. Yes, Ambassador, I understand, she said. Now we can go, the ambassador said. She walked to the door. She turned to wait for Beth. Are you ready? She asked. She held out her hand. I think so, Beth said, stepping forward. The ambassador linked her arm with Beth's. Come along then, she said. It's time. They walked through the doorway together. This episode concludes The Ambassador by Terry Morgan. I hope you have enjoyed listening as much as I have enjoyed reading. It's been quite a journey writing the books and getting to this point in that journey has taken discipline, perseverance, and the help of a few friends, mostly from the story, but some in the real world. The connection between the characters in the story, the ideas in the story, and the real world of traditional martial arts is a thread that runs through all of the stories, and it informs all of the characters. They embody the arts. The story is one that I found intriguing. It kept me interested for 5 years. Once again, thank you. I appreciate you being here. You've been listening to Storytime, old time radio for a new era. Thank you. Good night.